Now that you've returned from deployment, let's go over your reemployment rights under the Uniformed Services Employment and Reemployment Rights Act, or USERRA. As you were briefed prior to your deployment, this federal statute generally protects your employment and reemployment rights while performing your military service. Today, we will discuss how USERRA helps service members retain their civilian employment and benefits and ensures they are not disadvantaged due to their military service. We will also talk about the responsibilities required of both you and your civilian employer under USERRA. We'll also touch on the services provided by Employer Support of the Guard and Reserve, or ESGR. ESGR is a Department of Defense organization that is specifically chartered to improve or bridge the communications gap between civilian employers and their military employees in an effort to build better relationships between them. Returning to work following a deployment or a mobilization can be difficult and stressful. Sometimes, the process of reintegration can take several months to complete after a deployment. In general, if you have been absent from a position of civilian employment because of your military service obligation, you should be eligible for reemployment with your civilian employer, provided you meet the following criteria. You must have given your employer advance notice of your military service. You cannot be away from work for more than 5 years, with certain exceptions. You should return to work in a timely manner, as defined under USERRA. You cannot have been separated from the military with a disqualifying discharge or under other than honorable conditions. USERRA affords the same rights, responsibilities, and protections to service members who are employed as federal employees as they do for non-federal employees. However, USERRA does not provide protection for independent contractors. To be eligible for protection under USERRA, you must report back to work or apply for reemployment within certain time-based guidelines. For service of less than 31 days, the service member must return at the beginning of the next regularly scheduled work period on the first full day after release from service, taking into account safe travel home plus an 8-hour rest period. For example, an employer cannot require a service member who returns home at 10 p.m. to report to work at 12:30 a.m. that night. However, the employer can require the employee to report for the 6 a.m. shift the next morning. For service of more than 30 days but less than 181 days, the service member must submit an application for reemployment within 14 days of release from service. For service of more than 180 days, an application for reemployment must be submitted within 90 days of release from service. An application for reemployment need not follow any particular format. You may apply verbally or in writing. DoD recommends that this be in writing to protect all parties involved should a dispute arise or if a civilian employer requests verification. The application should indicate that you are returning from military duty and that you are seeking reemployment. Your employer must promptly reemploy you when you return from a period of service if you meet USERRA's eligibility criteria. Prompt reemployment means as soon as practical under the circumstances of each case. Under normal circumstances, reemployment should occur within 2 weeks of your application for reemployment. If you submit an application for reemployment after a period of service that is more than 30 days, you must provide your employer proof or documentation to establish your service obligation, especially upon request from the civilian employer. However, if this information is not readily available, your employer under the law is still obligated to reemploy you. If the documentation is received that shows the employee is not entitled to reemployment, the employer may terminate employment and any rights or benefits that the employee may have been granted. When you return from military service, you are entitled to be reemployed in the job that you would have had if you had not been absent for military service, with the same seniority, status, and pay, as well as other rights and benefits that are determined by seniority. This is known as the escalator principle. The escalator principle requires that returning service members step back onto the seniority escalator at the point they would have occupied if they had remained continuously employed. USERRA does not prohibit lawful adverse job consequences based on a company's circumstances. You could be at a lower level than the one you held previously, or a different job, or it could conceivably be in layoff status. Under USERRA, your benefits will be the same as though you had remained continuously employed during your period of service. In a contributory defined benefit plan, you are allowed to make up contributions in order to have the same benefit as if you had remained continuously employed. If a service member's most recent period of military duty was more than 30 days, he or she must not be discharged except for cause by the civilian employer. A reemployed employee may not be discharged without cause for 180 days after the employee's date of reemployment if his or her most recent period of uniform service was more than 30 days but less than 181 days, or 365 days after the date of reemployment if the employee's most recent period of uniform service was more than 180 days. Cause for discharging a service member may be based on conduct or the application of legitimate, non-discriminatory reasons. Persons who serve for 30 or fewer days are not protected from discharge without cause. However, they are protected from discrimination because of military service or obligation. Again, make every effort to work with your civilian employer to ensure your return from active duty is as smooth as possible. Establishing a good working relationship will not only benefit you when you return to work, but will benefit other reserve component members and veterans who work for or apply for jobs with your organization. The answers to many of the questions you or your employer may have regarding USERRA can be found by reviewing ESGR's website at www.esgr.mil or by speaking to one of ESGR's national case managers at 1-800-336-4590, option 1. You can also send questions via email to osd.userra@mail.mil.